This video describes the new Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate, which is used to mount the Accu-Wedge system on the bandsaw without the need for the Accu-Slice system. The description of this new Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate kit will be described in 3 separate videos. In this first part A, I'll describe the new Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate kit, demonstrate its key features, demonstrate its installation, and describe how to use the Accu-Wedge with this new mounting system. In order to verify the performance of this system, I performed a series of tests to determine if using the Accu-Wedge with this bandsaw mounting plate will operate with the same precision and accuracy as when used with the Accu-Slice index table. In this video, I'll describe the results of this testing, in which we cut a variety of segmented projects, including segmented rings with different numbers of segments per ring, segmented disc going to a perfect point in the center of the segmented disc, and trapezoid-shaped segmented disc. Since the actual cutting of the various projects was quite long, I decided to put this testing in a separate video. So in part B, I'll demonstrate the actual cutting of the various segmented ring projects using this new mounting system. I'll slice a number of segmented rings with different numbers of segments in the rings. I'll demonstrate the cutting of segmented rings with the segments going to a perfect point in the center of the segmented disc with no center gap. And finally, I'll describe the production of some trapezoid-shaped segmented rings. The results of this testing are described at the end of this video. In producing the various components for the Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate kit, I videotaped the actual machining of the various components. So if you want to make your own mounting system, this video demonstrates how we made this system and also includes schematics of each of the components. For additional details on the Accu-Wedge, the Accu-Slice system, and this new Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate, please go to the Accu-Wedge page on our website. This video will describe the final production of my Accu-Wedge system that mounts directly on the bandsaw table without using the Accu-Slice system. We've had numerous requests over the years from customers who wanted the Accu-Wedge system but didn't want to spend the money for the Accu-Slice system. So as a result, we developed this system where the Accu-Wedge system will mount directly on the bandsaw table using a special design plate and a rail. Because this Accu-Wedge system must slide on a rail. So we got to get this rail mounted to the bandsaw table. So we developed this system over the last 2 videos. I went through a whole series of developing this process using a plate and some different techniques to get it to operate properly. And then after that, those 2 prototypes, I made some final revisions to the system. And this will be the final version released in our website for sale. The mounting system will actually consist of 3 different components. It consists of a rail, it consists of this flat plate carriage with a dust guard, and 2 guides that go in the miter bar slot on the bandsaw. So let me just assemble this so I can show you how it goes together and what you need to install it on your bandsaw. So the system that we'll be selling will be a package consisting of a rail, this plate, and the guides. So this is be a 35-inch rail, and this is an aluminum plate, 1/4 inch thick, 6 inches by 12 inches, and we have a plastic dust guard mounted right on this plate. And then the final part of these 2 inserts that slide in the miter bar slot. Now if you watched the previous video, in that video I made some inserts with a single hole in the center. These are designed to go in T-slots on the bandsaw. In order for this system to work, you must use T-slots on your bandsaw. If your bandsaw doesn't have T-slots, we'll have to come up with a different way to mount it. But that can be done, but right now our preference is to use these inserts with T-slot connectors. But one of the problems with this system is I can't adjust the distance to the bandsaw blade. That's one of the advantages of the Accu-Slice system. I can actually move the Accu-Wedge back and forth to get it closer, further away from the bandsaw blade. And ideally, I'd like it to be maybe about 1/8 of an inch away from the bandsaw blade. That would be the ideal position. If it's too close, you're liable to hit the bandsaw blade. If it's too far away, you might get a gap where small pieces get stuck in there. So 1/8 of an inch seems to be about a good distance for that Accu-Wedge system to be from the bandsaw blade. So I came up with another system in which I took those same T-slide inserts, and I drilled a series of holes. The center hole is on center, and then I have one hole where it's offset by 50,000ths of an inch, and the second hole where it's offset by 100,000ths of an inch. So this will enable you to move the Accu-Wedge 50 to 100,000 of an inch away from or further away, either closer to or further away from the bandsaw blade. But the problem with this is, getting which is which is 50,000, which is 100,000. So I remade these, and I changed the shape of the system. Here's your center hole, which is on center. This hole is 50,000ths off center, and this hole is off 100,000ths off center. So it's easy to see now which is 50 and which is 100. Now in mounting these on the bandsaw table, it's really important that these both get oriented in the same direction. You don't want to put one mount in here, and one up here, or one up here, and one down here. It's important if you're using these, either mount here and here, here and here, or here and here. And if you wanted to move if these were in the miter bar slot like this, if you wanted to move your system closer to the bandsaw blade, instead of using this hole, you use this hole. Or, if you wanted to say move it closer to the blade 50,000ths, and you moved it here, and suppose that wasn't enough, you wanted to move it 100,000ths. Well, just reverse this 180 degrees, and now this is 100,000 inches closer to the blade. Likewise, if you wanted to move it further away from the bandsaw blade, you use these holes. And if you want it further away, you turn it upside down and use it in the other direction. So this gives you a little bit of flexibility. You can either move the Accu-Wedge system either 50 or 100,000 inches closer or further away from the bandsaw blade. But in most cases, you just want to mount it in the center hole. The system should be designed, should be pretty accurate, just using the center hole. But just gives you that additional flexibility, which you don't have here, which you do have in the Accu-Wedge, Accu-Slice system, but you don't have it here with this system. So the first thing to do is to mount my plate. Now this plate consists of, it's a 1/4 inch plate, 6 inches by 10 inches, and there's a series of holes in here, these countersunk holes. And these countersunk holes are for different makes of bandsaws. And it depends on how close your bandsaw blade is to your miter bar slot. On bandsaws such as the small Jet, Powermatic, and Grizzly, and some other small bandsaws of that class, the bandsaw blade is 3 1/4 inches away from the bandsaw blade. So you use these two sets of holes. Other bandsaws like the Laguna, it's 3 1/2 inches away from between the miter bar slot and the bandsaw blade. So you use these two slots. Some other bandsaws is 4 1/2 inches. So you use these two sets. Other bandsaw blades like the Rikon, it's 6 1/4 inches away from between the miter bar slot and the bandsaw blade. So you use these two sets of holes. So this plate is somewhat versatile. It'll fit a variety of different models and mix of bandsaws. And if one of these doesn't work, we can always modify one and get one to fit your exact model of bandsaw. So I start by first of all mounting these to the inserts in the miter bar slot using the flathead screws. And I want to always try, whenever starting out, putting it in the center hole. So I just mount it over here, slide it over, make sure I get the center hole, and attach the screw. Then I can slide this to catch the second one. And again, making sure I catch the center hole. It's important you don't try and catch one of the other holes, because when I do that, now this guide here is not parallel to my bandsaw blade, and you'll get inaccurate cuts. It's quite important that this system be parallel to your bandsaw blade. So I mount it in the center hole. And tighten it. Now I have it almost tight, not quite tight. And when I tighten it, I push it. You have a little bit of play here. So I'm going to push it towards the bandsaw blade and then tighten both screws. So this plate is somewhat centered on the bandsaw table, and pushed up against the miter bar slots to keep everything nice and parallel. And these just need to be snugged up, don't over tighten them. So next we have our rail, and the rail mounts in these holes that are not countersunk. There's 3 holes. You can use either 2 or 3 screws to attach the rail. And this is a 35-inch rail which we made special for this system. And just line up the holes and screw the rail in place. I'm just using 2 screws, but we ship 3 with the system. So it's up to you if you want to use 2 or 3. So that's our main system all mounted. This dust shield is a secondary dust shield for the system. There is a dust shield on the Accu-Wedge system. And this dust shield goes from top down. This one goes from bottom up. And these overlap. So by overlapping like this, it does a great job of keeping your sawdust out of your wheels on your Accu-Wedge system. Because that's one of the main issues with the Accu-Wedge system when you're using it. The sawdust gets in those polycarbonate wheels and it can start giving you some resistance. You'll feel as you're cutting, you'll start feeling some resistance as you're pushing it through the bandsaw blade. And that's because these wheels are getting clogged up with sawdust. So you need to take it off, just wipe it down with a damp rag, and that'll be fine after that. But if I can minimize that sawdust getting in there, all the better. And these double shields definitely do a great job of shielding those blades, or bearings. So we just take these bearings, slide them on our rail. And now you can see how these double shields work. Where this one goes from the bottom up, this one goes from the top down, and that double shield really keeps the sawdust out of those bearings on the bandsaw blade. And now we're ready to do some testing. I want to give us a pretty thorough test, so I'll be cutting a bunch of different boards. I'll be making some segmented discs from maybe 8 to 24 segments per disc. I'll be making some segmented discs that go to a perfect point in the center, which is probably the hardest segmented disc to make. And then I'm making some trapezoid shaped segmented disc where I tilt the bandsaw blade. So we'll be trying all of those to see how it works with this system. Let me briefly show how to adjust this Accu-Wedge system either further or closer to the bandsaw blade. Right now my edge of my table here is about 1/8 of an inch away from the bandsaw blade, which is perfect. That's a perfect position for the sled. But suppose I wanted to try and get it, say, 50,000 of an inch closer than 1/8 of an inch. So let me show you how that would be done. I'll take my rail off first. Remove these 2 mounting screws. And then let's look at our pieces here. Now I want to move it 50,000 inches closer to the bandsaw blade. So let me reverse these 180 degrees, because this piece now is 50,000 inches closer to the bandsaw blade. And do this in the same direction. So now I want to mount in these 2 right holes when I mount this plate. Now it's important here that I get the correct hole. Be very careful when you move these. But if you do it correctly, this guide here should be perfectly parallel to your miter bar slot and your bandsaw blade. Again, it's almost tight. Push it, tight against the miter bar slot, and tighten it. Put the rail back on. And then we mount the Accu-Wedge system. And now we're about a 1/16 of an inch away from the bandsaw blade. That's real close. In fact, it's so close that my dust shield is almost touching the blade, which is probably too close. I probably don't want it that close. I probably change it back to where it was, because I think that's a little too close. With some vibration, this dust shield could hit my blade, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to move it back, but if you need to do it, if your bandsaw is a little bit different or off, you can always adjust it with those keys in the miter bar. So I move it back, I just reverse it back. The machine just placed it, they should be pretty accurate, but you know, there's different models of bandsaws, and maybe a bandsaw was, you know, 3.4 inches away or something. You need to make an adjustment, so you can do a minor adjustment there. I just go back and mount in the center hole. And I can see I'm in the right hole because, you know, my screw mounts is, you know, centered in the slot on the bandsaw. So again, center this on the bandsaw table, push it towards the bandsaw blade, and tighten. I mentioned these keys are designed for bandsaws that have a T-slot, miter bar slot. If your bandsaw doesn't have a T-slot and just a regular flat, want to make a different system, we can use one of our rails from the Accu-Slice system, and we can design it with the offset cams to tighten it up. So that's another possibility. But our preference is to use these because they hold much tighter and much stronger. We do recommend using these T inserts for the miter bar to lock the system to your bandsaw. But if your bandsaw doesn't have T-slots, it just has a regular 3/4 inch slot, we do have a miter bar that can be used. So let me show you how to install that. Our preference is to use the small T-slot inserts because they're stronger and they just hold things much better. And the disadvantage of this is it's more expensive. So I prefer using the less expensive but better T-slot holders. Okay, to install this miter bar, we just disassemble the system as we did in the past. Remove my inserts and insert this miter bar. It has 2 offset cams that lock this rail into the miter bar slot, and these cams must face with the short edge facing this way, so it pushes the rail against this edge of the miter bar slot. So just turn it as a 1/4 turn, just a light 1/4 turn is all you need. And then there's holes pre-drilled in here, so just round it up and screw it in place. There we go. And I have my gap again, same 1/8 of an inch gap between my table and my bandsaw blade, so that's all set. As I did state previously, my preference is to use these T-slot inserts if at all possible. They're just stronger and they're less expensive, and they have the adjustment so you can adjust the gap, where I can't adjust the gap with the miter bar insert. And this should get us back to a gap of about 1/8 of an inch, which I think is a perfect size. You like to have it close that the dust shield doesn't hit the bandsaw blade, but also if it's too far away, you know, wood can get stuck in here and get jammed in there, so you don't want it too far away either. See, I got a gap there of now about 1/8 of an inch, which I think is perfect. But also now you can see how these double dust shields work. where this shield is going from the top down, this one's going from the bottom up. So you have double protection. So the sawdust to get into those wheels on the Accu-Wedge would have to go underneath this guide, up and over this. So it's quite a distance for it to go. So it does a great job of shielding those bearings from the sawdust. Now some sawdust does go around here, so you will see some sawdust setting on here, but 95% of the sawdust is trapped between those two shields. So that's an improvement over our existing Accu-Wedge system, because those double shields just give you a much better protection for your wheels on the carriage. Now these wheels, if they do get dirty, what happens is sawdust builds up in the wheels, and if the sawdust builds up on the wheels and you get a lot of pressure, it can actually crack these polycarbonate wheels. So when you start feeling resistance as you're pushing boards through the bandsaw blade, just pull this Accu-Wedge off, take a damp rag and just wipe the sawdust off these rollers. That's all that's needed to be done. So on our standard Accu-Wedge system, I do this after every 1 or 2 discs that I cut. I take it off and clean the wheels, but should need to be done a lot less with this new system now. When you first set up the Accu-Wedge on any table, either this new table we've built or in the Accu-Slice system, it's always important to make sure that the blade is perpendicular to the table on the Accu-Wedge. The blade may be perpendicular to your table, but possibly this is a little bit out of skelter. So you always want to double check it. Make sure your table is perpendicular to the blade, and if necessary, loosen the clamps underneath the table, adjust the table, and then tighten them. But you always want that blade perpendicular to the table so you get nice square cuts on your segments. Since the actual cutting of the various projects was quite long, I decided to put this testing in a separate video. So in part B, I will demonstrate the actual cutting of the various segmented ring projects using this new bandsaw mounting plate for the Accu-Wedge system. The purpose of this testing was to confirm that I can get the same accuracy and precision with this new mounting system that I have previously demonstrated with the Accu-Wedge mounted on the Accu-Slice system. I will slice a number of segmented rings with 8, 18, and 24 segments per ring in a completed segmented disc. I will also demonstrate the cutting of 12 segment rings with all the segments going to a perfect point in the center of the segmented disc, with no gap in the center of the segmented disc. And finally, I'll demonstrate the production of some trapezoid-shaped segmented rings. These techniques have all been shown in many of my previous videos on cutting segmented wedges using the Accu-Wedge system. I will describe the results of this testing at the end of this video, as well as in part B of this video series. I just finished testing this mounting plate for the Accu-Wedge, which enables the Accu-Wedge to be mounted directly to the bandsaw table, not requiring the Accu-Slice system. And I did a bunch of testing just to confirm that it operates in the same manner that the system works on the Accu-Slice system. So I cut a variety of segmented discs. I cut some regular segmented discs going from 8, 18, and 24 segments per layer. Then I made some segmented discs going to a perfect point in the center. And then I made some trapezoid-shaped segmented disc. And this is all different techniques I've used and had in various other videos in the past. In general, I'm quite pleased with the system. In fact, I almost like it better than using it on the Accu-Slice system, mainly because of the double dust shield. That really does shield the bearings on the rollers on the Accu-Wedge system, so they don't get clogged up near as easy. But as far as performance, I'd say it's identical to operating on the Accu-Slice system. So let me show a couple close-ups of some of these pieces so you can see the final joints. I did glue up a bunch of these, so I actually glued them up and then I took them to my edge sander, sanded them smooth both on surfaces and on the edges so you can see the joints. And I have a couple more I made here that are not glued up yet. So I made about a dozen segmented discs using different techniques just to show that the joints come out nice and tight and operate just as well as on the Accu-Slice system. Let me start with the first disc I made. This was 18 segments. And there's how the edge looks. And the opposite side. nice grain on this wood. It came out really nice. But nice tight joints. They came out really good. So that's the 18 segments per layer. Then I made 24 segments per layer. Same thing. There's the edge. And there's the opposite side. And then I made 8 segments per layer. Then I made 2 discs go into a perfect point in the center. And I mentioned this is probably the most difficult cut to make on the system because it's really hard to get that exactly right. But these both came out really good. In fact, I can already see the center point. There's the edge. There's the opposite side. So that's the one. Here's the second one. These were a little bit different. One was a little bit tighter than the other, but in reality I can't see the difference at this point. Then I made some trapezoid segmented discs by tilting the bandsaw blade to 105 degrees, and these are 18 segments per layer. Here's the first 2 that I made. There's your trapezoid segments. And the opposite side. Again, nice tight joints. They came out really good. Then I actually made 8 of these with some red heart and maple wood. I actually made these for a project I'm working on. I'm working on some segmented eggs, and these are going to be the center pieces for those eggs. But again, just looking at the joints, they're nice and tight. Those would be real nice. Then I made a couple other ones. Here's one with, it's not glued up yet, but this is some yellow heart. It's not glued up yet, so these are all loose. But just some different woods I make because I am working on a couple projects right now to use this. So now if you want to order an Accu-Wedge system, you have 2 options. Number 1, you can buy the Accu-Wedge system along with the Accu-Slice system. And the Accu-Slice system consisting of the index table, a rail, and possibly even a carriage. The other option is buying the Accu-Wedge system and buying this mounting system. The mounting system consisting of the 35-inch rail, this mounting plate, and the 2 inserts. It'll be a package that we sell as a complete package for the Accu-Wedge system. So a complete system would consist of the package with a flat plate installation here, an Accu-Wedge system, and an Accu-Stop system. So you still need to buy 3 components: the Accu-Wedge system, the Accu-Stop, and the flat plate mounting system. And this is a complete kit to do this installation. It consists of the plate with holes for various sizes of bandsaws, and the dust shield, mounting screws. These are the inserts for the miter bar slot, and it is important these are T-slots. So your bandsaw must have a T-slot miter bar, and it must be 3/4 inches wide. And this rail is 35 inches. This is the kit, which will be listed and described more on our website. For additional details on the Accu-Wedge system and this new Accu-Wedge mounting plate system, please visit our website. Once again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please give us a call or drop us an email. Thank you.